One moment she was young, and then just a few days later, she looked decades older. This woman's sudden transformation remains one of the most unsettling medical mysteries ever recorded. A prisoner lowered into a dark pit emerged moments later, aged beyond recognition, his hair white and his face frozen in terror. And then there's Marie Antoinette. If the stories are true, the night before her execution, she went to sleep with dark hair and woke up with it completely white. These are disturbing real cases of people who aged overnight. This is Nguyen Thi Phuong in both pictures. No, this is not a young woman standing next to her grandmother, and no, these images were not taken decades apart. Phuong was just 23 when she went through one of the weirdest medical mysteries ever recorded. One day in 2008, she had a bad allergic reaction to some seafood. Her face swelled up, her skin got itchy, but instead of going to a doctor, she treated it herself with herbal medicine and some sort of steroid medication over the counter. Well, this was a big mistake. Within months, her skin started sagging, her face wrinkled up, and suddenly she looked like an old woman. By the time she was 29, she looked like she was pushing 80. Only her face aged, the rest of her body was totally normal. She could still move like a young woman, her voice stayed the same, and her energy levels were fine for the most part. Just from the neck up, it was like she had aged 50 years overnight. Doctors had a few theories. Some said it could be lipodystrophy, a rare condition that messes with fat distribution in the skin. Others blamed Cushing's syndrome, a hormonal disorder that can cause premature aging, but the most likely culprit was the substances she took to treat the allergic reaction. Long-term use of certain unregulated substances can cause skin thinning and rapid wrinkling, and it seemed like Phuong had been using them for years. Even with all the media attention though, her case never got a clear explanation, and to this day people debate whether it was purely medical or something more mysterious. A curse, some kind of supernatural punishment? Well, probably not, but when you look at these photos, it's hard to believe this was just an allergic reaction treated wrong. Whatever happened, Phuong became one of the most disturbing real-life cases of someone aging overnight. Houska Castle isn't your typical medieval fortress. It wasn't built to keep invaders out, protect a king, or even house nobles. It was built to seal something in. Found in the Czech Republic, Houska Castle sits in the middle of nowhere, miles from any strategic location. It has no water source, no defensive walls, and no kitchens. All things that you'd expect from a proper castle. And that's because it was supposedly built over a massive bottomless pit, and locals believe was a gateway to hell. Before the castle was constructed, villagers would whisper about all sorts of terrifying tales. They'd claim to hear inhuman screams echoing from the pit, and heaven forbid you found yourself close to it at night. It was said that winged beasts would fly out of it and drag you down below. Desperate for answers, authorities came up with a test. A rather cruel test. They decided to offer a condemned prisoner a deal. Be lowered into the pit and report what you see. In exchange, you can be set free. Well, the man agreed, and they started lowering him down, deeper and deeper and deeper. They patiently waited for any sign of distress, but it was just quiet, till suddenly it wasn't. The prisoners started screaming in terror. They raced to haul him back up. When they finally did, everyone recoiled in shock. The man looked completely different. It looked like he had aged decades. His hair was white, his face had these deep wrinkles, and he had this look of pure horror on his face. He died soon after, babbling about monstrous creatures waiting below, and that was that. To stop whatever was inside from escaping, Houska Castle was built over it, with a chapel positioned at the center, right above the pit. Next up, we have the tale of Marie Antoinette's hair. The story goes that it turned white overnight. It's become one of the most famous parts of her tragic history. Legend says that just before her execution, Marie Antoinette's hair went completely white in a single night. This supposedly happened after she was imprisoned during the French Revolution and was faced with the terrifying reality of what was about to happen. On the night before she was about to be killed, the pressure and emotional turmoil was just so intense that by morning, her hair had changed color, and that it had no color anymore. It said that she went to sleep with dark hair, and when she woke up, it was completely white. In the 1950s, a traveling salesman named Richard Walden disappeared for 3 days while on a routine business trip in rural Pennsylvania. When he was finally found wandering along a highway, he looked years older than he'd been just a few days before. His black hair had turned white, his skin was loose and aged, and he spoke with the weary voice of an old man. When asked where he'd been, he only said, "I knocked on the wrong door." Later, authorities traced his last known location to some dilapidated farmhouse deep in the woods. Inside, they found an old table set for dinner, but the food was rotten, covered in dust. The house had been abandoned for decades. Richard refused to say anything more. He died 6 months later, looking nearly 90 years old, despite only being in his 40s. In Japanese folklore, there's an old legend about a fisherman named Urashima Tarō. It's one of Japan's oldest folk tales, first recorded over 1,000 years ago. Urashima Tarō was just a regular fisherman, till the day he made a choice that would cost him everything. One morning he saw a group of youngsters tormenting this small turtle on the beach. Feeling bad for the little thing, he stepped in, scared the bullies off, and set the turtle free. That should have been the end of it, but the next day, a much larger turtle appeared and told him that the one he'd saved was no ordinary creature. She was a servant of Ryujin, the dragon king of the sea, and as thanks for his kindness, Tarō was invited to the legendary dragon palace beneath the waves. He accepted. The stories say he spent his days in paradise feasting, drinking, and being entertained by Ryujin's daughter, the beautiful Princess Odahime. It felt like a dream, but he had no idea how much time was passing. Eventually, he started getting homesick and decided to leave. The princess was disappointed, but she gave him a parting gift, a mysterious box. She told him to never open it. When he returned to shore, everything had changed. His home was gone, the village was different, the people, the clothes, even the way they spoke. It was all unfamiliar. Confused, he asked around. That's when he learned the truth. He thought he'd only been gone for a few days, but 300 years had passed. Desperate for answers, he forgot the princess's warning and opened the box. Thick white smoke poured out, wrapping around him. In an instant, he collapsed. His skin wrinkled, his back hunched, his hair turned white. The box had contained his lost time. Urashima Tarō aged 300 years in seconds, and then he was gone. Now, most toys get old, but not like this. So yeah, this doll right here supposedly didn't always look like this. It aged quite poorly, mind you. Now, this didn't happen over the course of a night, but for a doll, any aging is fast. The story goes that a little girl had a favorite doll she took everywhere. It had soft rosy cheeks, bright blue eyes, and golden curls. But like most childhood things, it eventually got left behind, tossed into an attic, and forgotten. Years later, her parents were clearing out old junk when they found the doll again, only something was wrong. It had changed. The bright eyes were now sunken and dull, its plastic skin had yellowed, shriveled, and wrinkled like it had aged. The golden curls were now brittle and white, like an old woman's hair. Freaked out, they got rid of it. A collector claimed to have bought it, only to find that months later, it had changed again. It looked ancient now. The Battle of the Somme was one of the most brutal and unrelenting conflicts of World War I. The British soldiers who fought there were thrown into the chaos of constant shelling and brutal trench warfare. One of them, a man in his 20s, ended up being part of this nightmare. He was young, full of life, eager to serve his country, but when the battle started, everything changed. The first few days were pure hell, with the constant explosions and artillery fire rattling everyone. Then one day, during a massive bombardment, he was knocked out cold by a shell blast. He finally came to. Hours had passed. His head was spinning and his body was aching. He felt frail. When he finally made it back to his unit, no one could quite place what had happened, but his friends did notice this change in him right away. He didn't look like the same guy who'd enlisted even. He was slow, tired, and his eyes had this distant, exhausted look, like he'd seen a lifetime of horrors in just a few weeks. The soldier didn't talk much about what happened. He kept fighting, but everyone could tell something was off. It wasn't like he just looked older, it was like the war had stolen years from him. After a while, he was sent home. His body was just too worn out to keep fighting. What happened to him after that, no one really knows. As to whether this particular story is 100% true or not, one thing is clear: trauma has been known to age people significantly. Most people think aging is just about time, wrinkles, gray hair. You get slower as the years go by. But for some, aging doesn't come gradually, it hits all at once. And sometimes the cause isn't time, but trauma. There are real cases of people who have been through something so physically or emotionally intense that it seemed to steal years from their life overnight. One of the most well-known examples is prisoners of war. After just a few months or years in brutal conditions, some former POWs come back looking decades older than they should. Scientists have found that extreme stress can damage the body on a cellular level, shortening telomeres, which are the protective caps on DNA that determine how fast we age. The more stress someone endures, the faster their body deteriorates. But trauma doesn't have to be physical. Emotional shock can do the same thing. There are stories of people experiencing horrifying events, like losing a loved one suddenly, surviving a disaster, or being in life or death situations, who then wake up the next morning with white hair, a sunken face, and sometimes deep wrinkles that weren't there before. For those who go through it, this kind of accelerated aging isn't just cosmetic. The body actually wears down faster, leading to a higher risk of disease and even a shortened lifespan. Time might march on at the same pace for everyone, but for some, a single moment of terror or suffering is enough to accelerate the clock. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.